Welcome to the Understanding the State of Illinois Black Business Survey. How many of you were able to be at our meeting in December at Neal Street Blues? As kind of just a show of hands, yeah. So this is a progression or a continuation of that meeting and discussion and conversation that we're having on how we expand, build upon, develop, train our community around the minority business, enterprise work, women-owned business development. So today's luncheon is sponsored by City of Champaign and City of Urbana, the Chancellor's Compact, the Community Coalition, community-wide group that's made up of government, schools, business, parks, funders, great space, housing authorities there, great space where we're coming together to work on our community's most difficult social and economic issues. And so we really are in a very interesting time in our community. I like to talk about this time period that we're in as post George Floyd, right? Crisis, community-wide, communities all across the country struggling with this specific incident. We leave from George Floyd and go into COVID. And so the opportunity and time has never been more critical than what we have and what we are in right now. Since that time, the Chancellor started his compact to address injustice, social justice issues, our history of race and racism, and again, not a more important time across the country and here in Champaign County. So also since that time, the City of Champaign has developed and put in place what we call our Equity Engagement Department. I'm one of the staff in that department. Rachel Joy is our director. It's roughly a year old for the City of Champaign. But, you know, with Dorothy David's leadership, I believe we are moving in a direction as an organization like we never have before. And our investment in human capital over the last 3 to 5 years has been unparalleled here in our community. And so, as part of our equity engagement work, Rachel has said, Tracy, it's important that we look at Black economics, Black wealth, our economic development systems, organizations. An important part of what we're looking at, assessing, and trying to figure out how we have the most important impact community-wide. We realize at the City of Champaign our responsibility for leadership in this area, and I think we're hitting it head on. So we have a great group comprised here. I really like to do individual introductions. I'm not going to do all that today, so we're going to do the broader. So if you're here from government, will you raise your hand? All right. If you are here from the University of Illinois, raise your hand. If you are here as an entrepreneur and a business owner, raise your hand. If you work for an organization that does training, development, working on MBE, WBE issues, raise your hand. I think I got everybody, right? So thank you everyone for making making it out today. Um, the survey, and Matthew does a phenomenal job of breaking down the survey, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. But I do want to share a couple of kind of assessments for this year or so that I've been intentionally looking at this area of MBE, WBE work in our community. And so we have a great, you hear this term, resource-rich community and all of these types of things, phrases like that, I should say. And we do have stuff, and we have programs, and we have new initiatives, right? We've got a significant history of all of these things, right? Been doing community work for a very long time here, and I can go back and think historically of the initiatives, the programs that we've started, but not any of them have sustained themselves, right? And so we've had a number of successes through the years and individual successes. There are a number of folks in here that maybe a program or two started them in business, and they're doing quite well. But I would tend to say that most have not sustained and built and are still building and thriving in the environment and the culture and the climate that we have. And so I think all of you that know me knows that I operate from a strengths-based perspective. So I'm not here overly critical of anyone or anything other than what we have is not sufficient. It's not sustainable. We can't continue to do what we've always done. So as I've talked to organization heads and they say to me, oh, Tracy, you know about our program? Or do you know what we're doing? And I know what that is in isolation. And it enables you to say, look at what we have and look at us, right? But as a community, and if we talk about strengthening and building capacity, sustainability for Black business, our community's health, wealth, we can't keep doing all this great growing and building. What's that, Bruce? I think we're over about 10 billion in the last decade of development and growth we've done as a community. But if you talk about Black business, Black community, health and wealth, I can put it in my one hand, right? So that enables us to know that we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to work in front of us, not behind us. And so if you think about, and I want you to really take an open mind to the data that Matthew's going to share with you today. So I don't want you to say, hey, I'm doing that in my organization. I don't want you to say, yeah, we talked about that. I want you to think about community-wide, system-wide, how we use this data to drive what we do. So it's not enough for you to say, hey, I found this organization or this funder, right? If we aren't talking about our funders, our lending institutions, lending to Black business here in our community, we're only putting Band-Aids and stopgaps on the issue of creating resources, wealth, the opportunity for Black business to grow. I'm not going to give our data of our lending institutions lending to Black folks, Black business. The data is horrible at best, horrible at best. And so I want us to think about, we talked about in December, 5 key areas that I know driving the work that I'm really going to be pushing community-wide. So one would be this notion and idea about a business incubator. In every meeting, training, event, activity that takes place, this idea of a business incubator that allows businesses to develop, form, create administrative support, create clerical support, financing, building capacity, bringing organizations together, the business incubator comes up. Number 2, we've started, and I love what we're looking at, working with Business Elevator, creating this business pop-up model so that we give startup, smaller, businesses, vendors, an opportunity to sell their wares, to let the community know about them, is number two. We have to look at our focused and intentional initiatives that we take on. So one of the things, I've had a couple of conversations with the Black restaurant owners, and maybe we need a Black restaurant association or grouping, bringing them together to talk about the unique needs of Black business, Black restaurants. Four is we've got to address financing resources, that providing that necessary critical component. Matthew's data that he's going to talk to us about Black folks getting into business, and I don't want to talk too much about that, but it's really phenomenal. We were at a Black Chamber event a couple of weeks ago, and we had probably 15 different entrepreneurs at the table, and Will Kyle's question to them was, why are you in business? And most of them said, I want to create a legacy for my kids. Most said, I'm in to address the social issues, the needs of the Black community. I think there were only two that said, I'm in business because I want to make money, right? And that's critical information when we're designing programs, trainings, trying to figure out how we build capacity to understand that important information about Black folks and how and why we start business. And then the last one is we need a mentor protege type of initiative to support those in business with those who are getting into business and building that up. So again, I want you to have an open mind about the data. Don't start shaping it to say, oh, look, we're already doing that. I want to get us out of that thinking. I want us to get us in the mindset of how do we come together to build a sustainable system that starts with youth and goes all the way up, okay? So I'm going to bring up Matt Simpson at this point. He's back there trying to sneak a bite to eat, but he can eat it cold. So let's give him a round of applause.
I'm trying to finish that Neal Street. So good afternoon. It started light, but it got better. So good afternoon. There you go. That's what I like. That's a Champaign welcome right there. So as he said, my name is Matt Simpson. I'm from Rockford, Illinois. Anybody here from Rockford? Elgin, he said? No? Okay. Anybody familiar with Rockford? Okay, that's what's up. That's what's up. Well, I'm bringing you glad tidings from Rockford, Illinois. I'm a father. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I have 4 babies. I say, well, 5 babies in total, 4 nieces and 1 daughter, and they're all my kids. So I'm a proud father. That's kind of the most important job I have. But in addition to that, I'm very honored to serve the state in this capacity as the African American Business Development Manager in the Illinois Office of Minority Economic Empowerment, which is part of the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Whole bunch of multi-syllable words. But I support Black business development throughout the state. In addition, I also support veteran-owned businesses and individuals with disabilities who are advancing business throughout the state. So I got a few things on my plate, but I'm proud to work in this capacity. I don't take it lightly that I'm serving the citizens of the state. The approach I take to this work is community-led economic development. So I'm not a hero. I get a W-2 at the end of the year. This year I had to file an extension because my tax information wasn't ready yet. So I still got to get that done. But the real heroes are the ones who raised their hand when they said who have businesses. Those entrepreneurs are the heroes because you're the ones who are scraping your pennies together to get a carpet cleaner or get those clippers sharpened up and solve people's problems. And when you serve your customers and earn money, what happens is, and we're going to speak to this, you create jobs, you invest in your neighborhood, and you change the dynamics wherever you're at. So that's the individual that needs to be celebrated. I'm here to help you. Community-led economic development. So those businesses are the heroes. Also, brothers like Tracy, in his capacity, trying to convene partners to think about how we can help those heroes. That's the intention of my work, and that's what I'll be speaking to today. So I do just want to, he recognized all of the players, but I do just want to recognize the city of Champaign for hosting me, as well as the city of Urbana. Darius, my brother, brought me down too. Those organizations doing that important work, Business Elevator, Champaign County Black Chamber, those, trying to do what they can where they are and convene the energy and the programming to make a difference. That's very important. Champaign County EDC, the Illinois Small Business Development Center, very important pieces to the puzzle. At every level, we need to recognize those who are here. And then the University of Illinois Chancellor's Compact, trying to convene everything and move something forward. Just want to recognize those players. So I'll start with some background information. What I'm gonna do is present a piece of the executive summary of a full report. So I don't want to hit you over the head with a whole bunch of talking points and data. I just want to give you some of the really impactful aspects of a report that we worked on. And here's some background information on that. So in 2019, there's an organization called the Brookings Institute. They do research, they produce knowledge, and in 2019, they produced a report said to expand the economy, invest in Black business. And essentially the report said that the United States population is about 14.2% African-American citizens. However, of the 5.7 million employer firms, only 2.3% of them were Black owned. So a very small percentage of the employer firms in the United States are Black owned businesses. And the case that the Brookings report was making was focus and support on Black businesses helps to bring jobs and economic development to Black communities while growing the American economy. They said, how does that do that? Because Black-owned businesses tend to hire Black people. And they tend to invest in the neighborhoods and the communities where they exist. That's how they grow and expand the economy. And that's a cultural thing, so it's not necessarily unique to the Black community. However, the Brookings Institute spoke to expanding the economy by investing in Black businesses. So I saw this information. I said, wow, well, what if we looked at the state of Illinois from this lens and asked that question? What does Black business look like, and how can we expand the economy? So background from that perspective was the Illinois population is about 14% African-American or Black. About 11% of all businesses in the state are Black-owned businesses, about 11%. However, only 2% of the employer firms are Black-owned, similar to the national numbers. So 14% population, only 2% employer firms are Black-owned. Similar situation, that's the background. So we want to pose the same question to the Illinois state context. So that's how we got to this collaborative effort. My agency, the Department of Commerce, we partnered with Chicago State University and the Chicago Urban League, as well as the affiliate urban leagues throughout the state, to conduct this, what we call first of its kind survey. Now, I've been saying this for a little while now and nobody's correcting me. So I'm still saying that this is the first of its kind. And that's because it's the first time a state agency has partnered with a higher education institution and a historic civil rights organization to focus specifically on the challenges and the perspective of the Black business community. That's pretty significant from my perspective. We put a lot of time and energy into it, and in February, we released the results, and I'm very happy to be sharing them today. So the goal was to learn directly from the business owners, but to support collaborative, impactful supports. Keyword being collaborative. Of course, we want to have impact, but the most important thing is that we can go fast by ourselves, but we can go far together. So to speak to collaboration is so important, and it's hard to do because you gotta, herd all of these cats. But the goal for this data was to equip those who are interested in collaboration with something to be smart about making it happen. And that's the whole intention. We have some data. We don't have warm and fuzzy feelings anymore. We don't have kind of hunches and anecdotal glimpses anymore. Now we got a little bit of information to light the path that we can walk. And then the final point is the survey included self-reported data from 1,355 businesses. And we know that there are about 141,000 Black-owned businesses in the state. Now, we feel pretty good about this sample size, 1,355 businesses, because when Nielsen, the ratings company, wants to know how many people are watching CSI, they want to survey 1,200 households nationwide. And they want to extrapolate what that looks like for their viewership, 1,200 households nationwide. We were able to hear from 1,355 Black businesses in Illinois. So we feel pretty good about that sample size. We're not trying to say that we know what every Black business thinks and looks like, but this is a sample that helps us understand and gives us a profile and inform some strategic steps moving forward. So that's the background. There are sections to the report. The first section is characteristics of Black-owned businesses. And I do want to say at the end, I'll put up a QR code where you can just hold your phone up and you can get a link to the full report. So, of course, you can take some notes too, but I just want you to know you don't have to try to get it word from word. The industries were really interesting. We want to know where Black businesses are operating and doing business. And it's some overlap between those industries that were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic and the industries where Black businesses index high. Now, at the top, you see professional services. That's interesting because, and that speaks to, CPAs, lawyers, consultants who have an expertise in a certain industry. Professional services being the highest, that speaks to the education level of Black entrepreneurs in our state. There's a data point. We find that Black entrepreneurs are educated individuals, and we see that represented in the professional services being the highest among the respondents. But then we see food and restaurants. We see education and social services, which tends to be nonprofits and, social services, childcare sometimes. But then you see retail, personal services, and arts and entertainment. And we know that when the resources and support were rolled out to help those companies impacted by the pandemic, they were targeted to certain industries. Those industries were food and restaurants, retail, personal services, and arts and entertainment. So we know that there's a really strong overlap between those industries that were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic and these industries where Black entrepreneurs index the highest. Food and restaurants. If you weren't able to pivot and do curbside or create a patio outdoor space, that business may not be here anymore. That was a lot of Black businesses. Retail, they had capacity limits for entering your retail establishment, trying to limit the spread of the pandemic. Personal services, barbershops, beauty salons, estheticians, nail techs, they shut that industry down for 7 months. So you couldn't make money. And we see that this is one of the highest industries for Black businesses. And then arts and entertainment, that is concerts, promotional events, entertainment opportunities. You couldn't congregate in large groups because that was a fear of spreading the pandemic. So There's a direct overlap. And when we say, oh, we're kind of getting out of the pandemic, we're on our way out, some people aren't as far out of that pandemic situation. So now we just have some data points that helps us understand that overlap. There were some industries that were disproportionately impacted, and we see that Black entrepreneurs index high in a lot of those industries. We got a data point that speaks to that. And at the bottom, you just see time of operation, just a broad spectrum of those respondents. Some were 10 plus years, 3 to 9 years was about 40% of those respondents, and then less than 2 years, which is a lot, was 31%. Another very interesting set of characteristics, business size. 66% of respondents are what we call micro enterprises or solo entrepreneurs, meaning they have no part-time or full-time employees other than themselves. So that means that they're doing it by themselves. They're doing everything. Black entrepreneurs, as we can see, tend to be fighting alone. So, I'm doing sales, I'm chasing down inventory, I'm trying to do my accounts receivable, make sure people pay my invoices. I got to do customer service. I'm trying to think about a new promotion. I'm doing everything. Interesting, as we saw at the national level, of the 34% of companies that did have full-time employees, 85% had Black employees. So when a Black business grows to hire people, they put people in position from their community. What we saw at the national level. And as I said, it's a cultural thing. What happens in other communities is similar. But this is a very powerful point. If we know that when a Black employer grows, they're going to hire a Black person, that can really address a lot of these stubborn workforce challenges that we have in our community. The question becomes, how can we help those businesses grow to need more employees? 53% of respondents are home-based. Over half of the Black businesses that responded are home-based. They're at the kitchen table, they're in the basement, they're in the garage trying to work out their dream. That's a completely different approach and perspective, a different set of needs for our service providers in the room. How do you approach that entrepreneur that is still at home? It takes a different touch. They're having different challenges. They're probably still at the home, dealing with family things in a different way, financial obligations in a different way. And the industry is different too. So an important thing to keep in mind. 53% are home-based. And then very, very small in terms of revenues. 60% of respondents reported their annual revenues before the pandemic were $50,000 or less. So that's a very, very, very small business making $50,000 or less. Now, obviously, you can have a lifestyle and make $50,000, and perhaps a lot of those revenues aren't being claimed. So we got to be realistic about that. But just knowing that this is the size of 60% of our respondents, very small businesses, you have to consider that as you approach that entrepreneur. There's a lot of opportunities for growth and exposure at that level. The pandemic impacted 66%, saying that they have revenue losses. 33% said they had no impact from the pandemic. So most of us were small before the pandemic, and then we got hit hard and we experienced revenue losses. Very important to keep in mind. This is what we learned from the survey. How do you approach that entrepreneur? Keeping in mind what they've been through. Perhaps occupying one of those industries that were disproportionately impacted, only having themselves operating a business, working out of the house, very small revenues. It's important to approach it the right way. Just respecting that position on the front end. Also, at the bottom, 64% of respondents were women. 64% of respondents were Black women to our survey. And we see that at the national level, the startup activity is highest among Black women, immigrant women, minority women. Startup entrepreneurial energy. Also, the failure rate is the highest. Black women, immigrant women, minority women. So that means that we need to, if we know that's where the energy is and activity is, we need to be intentional about providing support to guard against that failure rate. Another important characteristics, many Black women-owned businesses responded to our survey. This is where it was very interesting. In these research projects, you don't often hear about motivations. And Brother Tracy did reference at the Black Chamber meeting how they spoke about that a little bit. Well, we have some data about it. We asked entrepreneurs what motivated you to want to start and own your own business, and they were able to select from a list of options. And the top 5 most selected responses were to make a difference in their community, to create something for the future, to be their own boss, to bring an idea or vision to life, or to have freedom and independence. Now, obviously, we know you start a business, you got to eat. So you do want to make some money. We don't anticipate these people aren't interested in earning money for their business. But we asked them, what's motivating you? And you see the responses. So then we pushed that a little further. So we asked them, what are the influencing factors? So what influenced you to move in this direction? And they had a dialogue box. They can submit a unique response. So the overwhelming majority of those responses were very similar to the following. I was influenced because I want to bring real resources to the Black community. I want to provide a part of the foundation that will lead to a legacy for me and my family. I want to create jobs for all, make products in America by Americans with a good salary. And then one individual said, as a Black male having a bachelor's degree and 2 associates and no criminal background, but always having a difficult time finding employment. So this is powerful. When you ask a person, why do you want to start a business? Obviously, we know they want to make money, but what's the motivation? To make a difference in my community, to bring resources, to leave a legacy, to create jobs, and also to determine my own future because I'm not getting opportunities. That's an engine for impact right there. Just imagine if we empowered that individual with the right support, with the right resources. You see what they want to do. We're not talking about nonprofits and programs, which are very important. We're talking about a person with a product or service that can solve somebody's problem, intending to make a difference by way of their business. How powerful can that be? With the right support. It's very powerful. So, very interesting aspect of the survey. We're speaking to motivations. Haven't heard this level of information about the Black business community before. Then we get into financing. Obviously, we know that this is a very stubborn issue. Access to capital, we hear it so often. We asked what were the top challenges identified, top challenges as it relates to financing. And they identified the top 3 things: a lack of access to funding, limited cash flow, and insufficient funds to run the business, and insufficient credit, income, or collateral to qualify for a loan. Very foundational aspects of accessing capital. Some of it is related to connections and relationships. Some of it is relating to how you organize your information, what processes you have in place. But it's all connected to a lot of the things that were also shared as challenges related to the business. So these are the major things related to financing. And then, where do you get your startup funding as a Black business? Respondents told us that personal savings was the major source of their startup funding, followed by gifts and loans from family and friends and credit cards. And this is normal and typical. Most businesses, when you start up, you have to use owner's equity. You have to use business from the owners to fund the initial operation. What's different and unique about the Black business community is, typically personal savings or owner's equity represents the wealth position of a individual or their family, wealth. And in the report, we reference the average wealth position for a Black family being around $24,000 versus our white counterparts, which is usually about 6 times more than that. So when you're trying to start up a business using your personal savings and everything that you have to your name is worth $24,000, you're going to have a different experience. By experience, I mean you're going to struggle. It's going to be very, very hard. And the reason why that wealth position is different, we just have to be honest about that, is because of the history of the country. That's the result of this different disparity in the wealth. So how do we address that? How do we understand startup capital access given the unique circumstances of the Black community? The community that can respond to that is going to win. Very important to keep in mind. The point at the bottom, COVID-19 support funding. So this is something we asked the businesses, and I know there's a lot of organizations that were part of the Navigator network. 75% of respondents did receive COVID-19 support funding from the state or federal government. So 3 out of every 4 respondents shared with us that they were able to access some COVID funding. And we like to think, obviously, there's still a lot of work to do, but we like to think that the network of community navigators that we deployed helped with that. And I know some of these organizations are here, so we appreciate that. More on financing, which becomes very interesting. So external business funding. Just over 25% of Black business owners responded that they do leverage external business funding, like a line of credit, like some equity. So 1 out of 4 do have external business funding. However, 74% rely heavily on personal financing, with the bulk of the personal financing, 21%, coming from credit cards. So that's a recipe for disaster when you're overextending yourself in that way. Again, there's more data that we're going to speak to, which kind of colors the story in, but this is where the service providers need to step in and help. They told us they have access to capital issues. They don't have sufficient cash flows. They don't have the connection to the capital. They're leaning on personal finances, namely credit cards, because they're motivated to change their community. This is a huge risk and it's not safe, but they're doing what they know and what they can given their circumstances. Very, very dangerous. But we have a data point now that kind of puts it in our face. So that means we need to respond with the right support. And even more in this line about financing. When we asked Black businesses how much money they were seeking to start up the business, first we started with just a statement about the amount. The highest response was a moderate amount of funding. I just need a moderate amount of funding. Second highest was a little to start up my business. The third highest was a lot. So then we said, well, how much is that? What dollar range would that be? The highest response was between $1,000 and $5,000 to start up my whole business. The second highest was $10,000 to $20,000, and then the next highest was $5,000 to $10,000. So there is a such thing as a micro loan. There is a such thing as a financial product that can, target a specific project to supplement a larger plan. But when you're talking about how much money you need to start up the business, you need a lot. You need a lot of money. And you need a lot more than $5,000. So this is an opportunity around awareness and capacity building. And this kind of speaks to the perspective and vantage point that we've learned. Now, like I said, if you're making $50,000 in revenue, this is a scale. It's a look at scale as well. However, we need to grow the scale. We need to grow the perspective to create more sustainable operating practices. But we have data now to kind of speak to what we're thinking as a Black entrepreneur. We gotta help grow this right here. Now, moving from financing to operational and environmental challenges. These are challenges related to growth and expansion. So the business owner shared the following aspects of business were most difficult. Number one, most difficult thing, implementing technology. This is significant because the businesses that survived the pandemic implemented technology. The businesses that didn't survive struggled with implementing technology. It's crucial. It's really make or break. Now, some of us, like I said, the scale of the business may allow for you to operate on a more hand-to-hand personal basis, but the businesses told us the most difficult aspect was implementing technology. That means that the service providers in the room need to be thinking, how are we going to respond to ensure the Black entrepreneurs in our community who want to make a difference, who see themselves as an engine for change, can implement technology to be successful? Because this is really make or break. When we talk about technology, we're talking about a point of sale system that captures customer data, allows for you to push out promotions, also speaks to your accounting and bookkeeping, because that accounting is the reason why maybe you're not able to access capital too. This could be a really powerful solution for a couple of different problems, but we need to be thinking about how we're going to help them address this challenge. And social media is not technology. We have to understand that. There's a difference between your TikTok and your Facebook and, a customer relationship management platform. So we need to help build that muscle for our Black business community. Now, we need the social too, and that kind of speaks to the next 3 points. Most difficult aspects of operating a business: marketing their products or services, attracting customers, diversifying their client or customer base. These are really foundational aspects of business development. Marketing, getting in front of a customer. Because when you talk about those financial challenges, financing challenges, one of them was insufficient cash flow. The cash flow is coming from customers. So marketing is crucial. If you don't have customers, you don't have a business. The most important money that's going to come through your business is not going to come from a grant. It's not going to come from a loan. It's going to come from a customer paying you because you've solved their problem on a continual basis. So when they tell us they want to get help with marketing, this is powerful. Attracting new clients, diversifying that. We need to really get serious about this. That final piece actually kind of folds into the next slide too. Geographic market or location-based challenges. They expressed struggling with stagnant business environments. So this is more along that line of operations and environment. When we asked about questions related to their physical location, the top 3 challenges were the stalled or stagnant local business environment, lack of access to affordable brick and mortar locations, and lack of access to buildings that can accommodate the business needs. So what's interesting is that the stalled and stagnant local business environment. I've shared this data with organizations in Peoria, in Joliet, on the west side of Chicago, in Springfield, in East St. Louis, Carbondale, and every community feels like their business environment is stagnant. I'm talking about 1.5 million people on the west side of Chicago with the same stubborn perspective related to the business environment. So what that tells us is bigger than just our unique community. It's really a global shift in consumer behavior. Amazon, getting your groceries delivered to your house. People shop differently. That's a truth related to commerce. So when a Black business tells us we have a stalled or stagnant local business environment, that's not unique to Champaign, Urbana. It's not. That experience is still just as real. So we still need to find a way to respond to it. But I always just want to speak to that. It's not a unique challenge for Champaign, Urbana, What's going to be unique is how we come together to respond to it. What intervention we implement to make sure that our business environment feels more dynamic. What are the interactions between the different levels of business to make sure that we have some activity where we're at. The lack of access to affordable brick and mortar and buildings that accommodate, that's another really interesting piece. That brick and mortar can do a lot for you, or it can be a cage for you, depending on how you want to operate, depending on, what scale of business you're at. And especially nowadays when people are interested in an experience, a shopping experience, to get them off of Amazon. So we want to help people understand it's not as important for you to lock into a lease as an entrepreneur, especially starting out. These are the things we want to help our businesses understand. This is powerful too. We ask questions about being excluded. The operational and environmental challenges related to being excluded. The responses were 33% said they had difficulty securing financing from banks. That was the top challenge. They feel excluded in that way. Number 2, being restricted by the good old boy network. Being excluded from opportunities, feeling that as an entrepreneur. Number 3, discriminatory and racist practices, influencing feelings of being excluded. Number 4, difficulties bidding and winning contracts. These are really powerful. So we spoke to the financing piece, access to capital, feeling like you're locked out of those opportunities, being restricted by the good old boy network. You don't feel like you can make the connections necessary. You feel like there's a flow of information that you don't have access to. And you're honestly locked out of that information flow. You feel restricted. Discriminatory racist practices. You feel that by way of your presence, you are treated differently as an entrepreneur in terms of making connections, getting information shared with you, accessing opportunities. Bidding and winning contracts. You put your hook in the water and nothing ever bites. I feel excluded. These are data points. This is not a warm and fuzzy feeling. This is not a hunch. So what this means is, this data speaks to behaviors, right? It speaks to behaviors. So this is an interesting piece here, training and development. I'm going to get to the behaviors in a second. Survey respondents were asked what training and development support business owners might utilize to help build capacity. This is very powerful. They want to learn how to get in front of customers. They shared that with us. We know they have insufficient cash flows. That comes from customers. Number one thing they need help with is marketing. In detail, advertising, social, and traditional media marketing. Again, if you don't have customers, you don't have a business. The most important money that's going to come through your business is going to be from customers. And that's marketing is going to be a big part of that. So we need to help our businesses understand how to do that. There's a way to do that. Number 2 is accounting. Another very important piece is connected to the financial position. Procedures, expense tracking, budgeting, bookkeeping. You're not going to get a loan. You're not going to get a grant without those tight financial documents. And our businesses are telling us they want help with that. That's going to be a way to address the access to capital piece too. So we need to get serious about it. The third piece is what I really found interesting, is the Black businesses told us they were interested in development, meaning raising money. They want to learn how to do that. How do I raise money? How do I promote my business to investors? Acquiring additional financial resources. These are the areas where Black businesses are interested in learning more to build capacity. So the service providers in the room, this is a layup. Now, we still have to position it the right way, leverage relationships to deploy it. But this is the content that's going to take us to the next level because we got the engine for change. We need to connect them to the training opportunities. Now, speaking to those behaviors, feeling excluded. We asked, in addition to training, where do you turn for support? Formal and informal support. Top two responses were mentoring or people who I already know, essentially. My friends, my family, even industry contacts, people that I already know. That's where I turn to for support when I need it. Number two, my personal intuition, my gut. Top two responses. Where I turn when I need help. Now, this could be very powerful when you think about wanting to make a difference in my community, bring resources to my community. I feel excluded and locked out of the good old boy network. I'm not getting the resources. I'm locked out of the financial opportunities. So who do I turn to? People that I already know. Or I just listen to myself. Because who else is out here to help me? This is a data point that speaks to it. Now, we know realistically that if you're looking for money to grow your business, if you're looking to partner and get contracting opportunities, we're going to have to grow this network larger than my friends and my gut. Social capital, that's what we're talking about right now. Social capital. Now, this is powerful culturally, but economically, we have to crack this open and grow it. And some of that comes from us being more intentional about extending our hand as service providers. Because they've just shared with us, they feel excluded. They want to make a difference in their community. They don't feel connected. So realistically, I don't trust this legacy network of support. We have a data point that speaks to that. And it influences behaviors. We put a flyer out, nobody showed up. We got a new program, applications are low. They feel excluded. It's not real. So what do I turn to? People who I know and trust. And if we don't work to shift this, our programs are going to die on the vine and our community is going to stay isolated and stagnated. So we have a data point that speaks to it. Social capital is crucial. It's make or break. A lot of the solutions to our community's problems are in this network right here. But if we can't help them bridge it and cross over, the solutions may never materialize. This is how real it is. This is how important it is. And this is why, I really love the data. So we're almost at the end. One of my favorite parts of the survey is the empirical study. We partnered with the Chicago State University College of Business. Dean Derek Collins from the College of Business, Professor Scott Upshaw, and Dr. Ehab Yamani. Dr. Yamani, he applied regression analysis, that's way above my pay grade, to the 1,355 survey responses. The intention was to identify correlations. These two answers tend to happen together frequently. Correlations. So based on that, we found 5 conclusions. Number 1 was the education effect. Highly educated business owners are less likely to face exclusion challenges related to securing bank loans and discriminatory practices. This is a conclusion that we gleaned from analyzing our responses. Highly educated business owners are less likely to face exclusion challenges related to securing bank loans and discriminatory practices. Now, that's not to say that these businesses are not being discriminated against. Perhaps they've learned something to help them navigate more successfully. Perhaps the training or the education they received helps them address those experiences to achieve their goals. So what that tells me is that we need more education and training opportunities for Black businesses. We need to help them understand how to operate, business development, strategies, processes, networks, because we've learned that education effect is real. So I'm seeing this as training opportunities and chances for me to learn and sharpen my skills as an entrepreneur, not necessarily formal education. We need to implement training opportunities to help them navigate more successfully. Number 2 was the gender effect. Male-owned businesses tend to be more profitable. Male-owned businesses tend to be more profitable. This is not to say that male-owned businesses are better or female-owned businesses are worse. What we cited in the report was a data point that speaks to female-owned businesses being more constrained than male-owned businesses by way of familial obligations, responsibilities in and outside of the home, even though female entrepreneurs' access to capital looks different. So the gender effect tells us that we know that the entrepreneurial and startup activity is highest in the female business community, female Black business community. So we need to work to address those unique challenges that are limiting revenues. We need to do something about that. Obviously, the Black business community is the focus, but we learned where the startup activity is, and we see that profitability is lower, even though the energy and activity is higher. We need to address that. We need to find ways to provide support to the Black women entrepreneurs because that's where the activity is, in addition to on-ramps for the Black male entrepreneurs. Number 3, age effect. The age of the business owner is not a determinant factor in the success of a Black-owned business. The age of the business owner is not a determinant factor in the success of a Black-owned business. What that tells me is we need to do more to expose young people to entrepreneurship opportunities. Because the data told us that it didn't matter if you were older or younger as it relates to your success. So the question for us is, how are we making sure young people are plugged into opportunities to build businesses, learn about business, get exposed to what it means to operate a business? Because it doesn't matter if you're older or younger. So let's get some more young people involved. Number 4, firm age effect. Firms which have been operating for a long time in business tend to earn higher revenues. Firms which have been operating for a long time in business tend to earn higher revenues. This speaks to, I saw a data point, I want to say it was Forbes or Fortune magazine, that said 40% of Black-owned businesses disappeared as a result of the pandemic. So their doors closed. That's why it's so important for us to work to help Black businesses stay in business, to stay open. Because as long as they're operating, they have opportunities to grow more revenues. The longer they stay in business, they tend to earn higher revenues. We got to work as a community to help these Black businesses stay open. That's what this speaks to, helping keep those doors open. The firm age effect. The final piece is intuitive. Firms which have a higher initial startup capital tend to earn higher revenues. The old adage I know to be true is it takes money to make money. So those businesses that were capitalized properly on the front end tend to earn higher revenues on the back end. If you start out with more money, you can make more money as you operate. This means that as a community, we need to find ways to help Black business capitalize properly on the front end, not with credit cards and not trying to tap that $24,000 wealth that they have. What is our response to that? Again, this is data. This is not a community that is pitiful. This is not a woe is me message. These are people who are fighting for their lives every day. And with the right collaboration, the community can catapult to new levels, and that's the power of this data. So responding the right way could change everything economically for the community. So what happens always is like, we get to this point in the presentation. It's like, what next? We had the data presented. What do we do about it? Well, these are action steps that we being the Office of Minority Economic Empowerment and my team, my partners, the organizations that I work with throughout the state. These are things that we pull from the data and offer as low-hanging fruit, as project or program implementations that could be come around to, address some of these things. Number one is capacity building. That is training, education, skills development. And the state of Illinois, we have the Illinois Small Business Development Network. We have the SBDC here today. So the Small Business Development Center Network, provides support at no cost to any and all entrepreneurs, whether you're a startup, you're an existing company, you're trying to grow your business planning, web development, market research, all of these things at no cost. So that's the state's response to the capacity building piece. And it's not either or. There need to be local training and education opportunities. The community needs to have a response to the desires for training that are communicated here. Implementing technology, how do I raise money? How do I market my products? What is the community's response? And how is it relevant and culturally competent so that it feels accessible? We heard how they feel excluded. We don't want to add another feather in that same hat. Number two, access to capital. The state of Illinois' response includes a participation loan program called Advantage Illinois. This allows for Black businesses and minority-owned businesses to access capital at a 2% interest rate. So the program works where you need to still apply with a lender, and half of the project will be funded by the lender, half will be funded by the state. The state's funding will be locked in at a 2% interest rate. So you get a blended rate, lower interest rate debt financing. It's not a grant, but it's low interest debt financing. And there's nothing wrong with debt as long as you're using it to make you money. That's the state's response, Advantage Illinois. The community needs to have substantive lender connections on behalf of the Black business community. Substantive lender connections. That means tangible, accessible. It's not enough to have a program that you can pull out of your back pocket to talk about. What's the relationship between those that you intend to help in your programming and information? And who's in the gap facilitating that connection? That's the missing link, substantive connections. The funding is there in many instances. The connections are not. We need to help in that way as a community. Number three, contracting opportunities. The state of Illinois has what we call the Illinois Procurement Technical Assistance Center, or PTAC. This is similar to the Small Business Development Center. However, it focuses on contracting opportunities, how to become certified as a minority, woman-owned, veteran-owned business, how to join the bid boards and start getting updates on bidding opportunities. That's the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, operates at no cost. The community's response can include leaders building lists of businesses with capacity. Now, obviously, sometimes local governments or purchasing agencies, they have lists of businesses already. That's good. They end up gathering dust a lot of times. What we need is understanding who has capacity, who's ready, and what are the local government opportunities around projects. A lot of times there's a threshold for spending where you don't need to get a bunch of sign-offs, $25,000, $50,000, something like that. What are the quick wins we can stack up? Who has the capacity? What project do I need to get done? Let's make a quick win happen. Because we see they feel excluded. They feel like the procurement opportunities are not real. The local government, the local leaders around contracting opportunities can create some wins and make it real. Even though it's not a home run, we need to get on base. This is an opportunity here. Market programming. This speaks to the stagnant local business environment. There needs to be innovative responses to those market issues, similar to what's happening here with the neighborhood pop-ups. That's really innovative. We probably hear a lot about these pop-ups. People do one-off independent pop-ups, and that's sometimes we might raise our nose at it because they're doing one again. But it really is a powerful response to this stagnant business environment piece. For these small businesses, the low overhead, driving customers to a single platform, allowing for them to work out their product, do sales, iterate, it's really powerful. It removes so many barriers. The challenge is building the platform the right way, ensuring that we're driving the traffic, making it a legitimate opportunity and not just a corner side, halfway implemented program. Another innovative way to do it is to make it industry specific. I work with a group of businesses in Markham, Illinois, last Juneteenth to do, we got a South Sider in here? South suburb. I ain't getting no love for Rockford, but we got Markham in here. That's what's up. Last Juneteenth, we did a Juneteenth food truck festival. And the interesting thing is, it was really not that many food trucks. It was more so caterers. So we partnered with the city of Markham, the sister named Vicki Brown. Half of the day, we had the local county health department do a workshop teaching people how to fall in line with the health and safety obligations related to a food business operator. Then we went outside, had a DJ, had a bouncy house, had the caterers, had a couple food trucks, and we created the festival. That's a pop-up. It's industry specific. These are innovative responses to the stagnant business environment. Chicago feels the same thing. The question becomes, what is our response? And how do we really lean into it to make it real for people? And the final piece, in terms of action steps, is ongoing collaboration. And that is consistent stakeholder communication. And that's not to say we're not working hard wherever we're working at. We're not trying our best. But if we can't continue to share and connect with each other, we'll never get traction. We'll never sustain impact. We won't see the outcomes that would lend itself to the motivations of the Black business community. So we have to have consistent communication. We have to find ways to work together on projects, create small wins together. And if it doesn't happen, to get what you never got, you got to do what you never did. And we need new outcomes. So we need to collaborate consistently and communicate consistently. So this is the QR code. This will take you to the website for the Office of Minority Economic Empowerment's Business Resource Library. So at the top, you'll see the first entry is the full report. And then you'll see what we call the Business Basics series, which is a series of videos that provide training for businesses, really basic concepts. But that's the link to the resource library where you'll find the report. I want to make sure everybody got that. Then I just want to put some contact information up. This is the team from the Illinois Office of Minority Economic Empowerment. You see I have a different haircut on this picture, but that's my phone number and my email address. I do have some cards as well. We have Edwin, who is the Asian American Pacific Islander Business Development Manager. We have Deanna Alfaro, who is the Latinx Business Development Manager. And we have Michelle Lura White, who is the Women's Business Development Manager. So we're a small office, but our intention is to cover the state and provide support to the businesses that we serve. So I'll put that back up and
Let's give Matthew a round of applause for. So let's take about 10 minutes for specific questions from Matthew on survey results, and then we'll do the final 15 minutes that Darius will lead us through on what we should be doing, what next steps we need. I don't want you to stand up giving me commercials about your programs and organizations. I want us talking about what we should be doing to build the collaboration, the last slide. And then we're recording this, so I need you to speak in the mic. So who wants to go first? First question for Matthew, survey.
First of all, Matthew, great job. It's excellent. It's so excellent to see you up here, brother. I had the pleasure of working with Matthew years ago for a university-related project, so it's kind of a personal, appreciation for the brother. But
that's the good doctor right there. That's the good doctor.
So my question is to you, and it ties to a lot of things that the survey addresses. My question is, does there exist some form of business development checklist within the state that we can kind of fall into so that we can try to avoid a lot of pitfalls we run into signing up? Because it's easy to create a business.
Yeah.
You pay that LLC fee and whatnot.
Right.
But once you're in the arena, it's a whole different story.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask about that.
Great question, man. There is a doing business in Illinois checklist. Yeah, there's a doing business in Illinois handbook that includes a checklist. There's a link to that. I can share that with Tracy, or I can share that with you personally too. But that's through the First Stop Information Center. That's the Illinois Department of Commerce First Stop Information Center. It's a doing business in Illinois handbook, which includes a checklist. So it's like Secretary of State, local government zoning, all of those aspects. Yep.
Another question, survey.
My question was related to, and you may not be able to answer this, maybe someone else in the room, I don't know, but I recall that there was like an obligation for banks to invest so much in the local communities, something like that. So when you talk about the microloans, et cetera, is that still a thing, or where can someone get some information about that and hold banks accountable?
Are there any lenders in the room? Okay, we got a lender in the room who can speak to that. I think he was referring to the Community Reinvestment Act. Yep, so.
Sure. Yes. The Community Reinvestment Act came about in 1977, I do believe, and I'm with PNC Bank, by the way. But essentially, banks have an obligation by federal statute to lend, invest, and provide services in low-income communities or to low-income people. That doesn't necessarily the regulation speaks nothing to race at all.
Okay.
So there's that aspect of it. And in many instances, by regulation, banks struggle by their credit platforms or credit policies to lend based on certain credit profiles.
Yes.
So a lot of times what banks are doing is investing in what we commonly call CDFIs, or community development finance institutions. If you think about a CDFI as a nonprofit bank, it sometimes is easier, in which the bank isn't looking to make a profit. They're looking to lend in a way that perhaps a bank could not serve a particular customer. So here in town, I think Justine Peterson is here.
Okay.
I'm not sure of the other CDFIs in Champaign or not. But yet and still, I recognize personally the challenge of capacity to serve the community, even from the CDFI perspective. Do they have enough resources?
Right.
So
Right.
is it enough for banks to lend into the CDFIs? Yes, that's a wonderful thing. But if the CDFIs are still lacking capacity to help Black-owned businesses, then obviously there's some additional advocacy efforts
Right.
that need to be taken in order to ensure that the appropriate resources are there
Yep.
so that people can become properly capitalized to be able to move forward and develop and expand businesses.
What I'll say too is that's about that substantive connection piece. And then sometimes it's getting started. I'm working with a woman in Peoria, Denise Moore. I don't know if you know Denise. You know Denise? Okay, yeah, she's powerful. She's I presented this data in Peoria, and in the room there were 2 lenders, and we talked about, as a follow-up, doing something that we're calling now a financing fair, where she has programming interacting with businesses, and there will be a 2-day experience where individuals who attend the first day build out that capability statement, or like a 1-page financial snapshot for who they are as a business, kind of addressing that credit profile, that rigid credit profile piece, tell them more about who they are, their business. If they complete that training experience, they get to do a speed networking with 4 lenders and 1 CDFI on the second day. So it's trying to overcome those barriers to capital, and doing that addresses it head on. We learn more. We have an advocate on the inside who can help us navigate better. And I'm happy to do the same thing here.
Survey questions? Going once?
That mean I did a good job,
Right.
right?
All
Okay,
right.
we got one. Hold up, we got one. We
we're
got
gonna,
one.
Okay. You got to use the mic, sir.
Is there one place that you can find out all the resources that you can use to not only start a business but maintain it?
I think that, unfortunately, no. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think there's a lot of people in this room who can be great touch points for you to start. There's a lot of people in this room. It may not be one place, but there's a lot of people that can help you get to the same information. I do just want to say that the handbook that I mentioned is a great piece of material. And our office, the Office of Minority Economic Empowerment, every first Wednesday of the month, we do a webinar where all we talk about is money, financial resources, state, federal, local, private. And a lot of that is office hours. Like, we just want to open ourselves up to speak to the community. And that could be a good touch point too. But I want to say, connect with the service providers in the room as a first touch point. That handbook is a great resource. And our office has a webinar where we do everything we can to help you get started too. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, so we're going to take the remaining, 10, 12 minutes or so, take general questions, Q&A. So Darius, won't you go up here? That way we can use the mic for the audience, please. All right, let's give Matthew one more.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darius White with the City of Urbana Economic Developer. At this time, what we want to do is hear from you all as to what are these steps that need to be taken and how we can take them to continue to move forward into supporting our Black business community. So first, I would like to throw that question out directly to our business owners. I definitely will give a moment at the end for any organizations that support Black businesses to possibly speak out as to who can take a lead in some of these initiatives. But I would love to know from our Black businesses, what is it that you want from us? What's the next steps you want to see, and possibly even how? Whenever you get the mic, if you can please give us your name and what business you're representing. For those that are wearing multiple hats, just give us the top hat information. And if you can get us straight to that point rather than the testimony, just out of respect of everyone's time, we want to make sure that we get this information. So at this point, is there any business owner that would like to give some input on what they feel is next?
All right. Hello again, everybody. My name is Anthony Sullers, and I'm here representing what is called the SU Institute of HERE. That stands for Health and Education, Evaluation, Assessment, and Research. And the question or the component that I think I would like to get more insight about specifically is tied to that question about, checklisting, right? But more so the leadership development piece within a business. How do you actually come to maintain and manage a staff or a team? How do you get them motivated in the work? I think that's going to be a key part to a lot of people's success. I know definitely from mine. And so that's something that I would like to try to get a little bit more insight in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mariah Madison, and I am a serial entrepreneur here in town, predominantly on behalf of Buy Black Champaign here. One of the things that I would like to see happen is an active organization or community organization that can be the touch point and be a grassroots organization. So when you have questions about developing your business, you can go to them, whether you're just starting your business or you're an existing business. I love the idea about marketing your business because we all know that having a great service is only half of it. You got to have customers. So we need training on how to best market your business. And that does not mean posting on just Facebook and Instagram. And I like the technical classes and the business education and being able to foster mentorship because what I may know, you may not know it. So we can share wealth and share information in that points.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you.
Getting my steps in.
I'm Nathan Stevens. I own a small consulting business, Talented Talent Consulting. And going back to the presentation, it talked about, who knows about your service, your business, et cetera. So I guess one of my questions that I've wondered since I've been here in 2017, which is is there some type of communication hub? Something that kind of, particularly for the Black community, to say kind of who's who and what's needed and what's available and those type of things. So some type of information hub for communication and connections.
Thank you. We have one in front. Dr. Carolyn.
Hello, my name is Carolyn Randolph. I'm the owner of Seven Senses LLC. And my question is about financing, having access to finances, as well as access to commercial real estate that is within a good location and affordable.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, again, Nicole Clements, PNC Bank. I do not have a Black business, but I guess ultimately my question would be, how do we work together to strengthen our Black chambers across the board to serve as a source of advocacy? Because at the end of the day, what I'm hearing is the training, the technical assistance, the capital that is needed is something that we need to look to the state and federal level even to really be able to usher in some of those resources and not only usher in the resources, but get them in the right spot. So how do we as a community sort of rally around that and have one central point of advocacy so that we can make that case to our legislators, local elected officials, whoever, congressmen, what have you, to sort of push this on to be able to further those resources, to be able to make the change that everybody in this room wants to see.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
It's not easy when you're not doing your commercials, right? See? Well, I don't want to keep us longer. So, again, we had our kind of kickoff meeting last December at Neal Street Blues, where we really talked about, from different perspectives, our engagement. I think it was April, right, when we had our How to Do Business with the University of Illinois. We have today. So look out here in the next month or two for our next evolution of engagement, information sharing. Please check out the survey. Think about how we come together, how we address some of those key points, and think about how your entity can be a key catalyst for bringing connection and collaboration, right? So I really want us to hear, if nothing else, operating in a silo, operating, protecting your turf, or saying, look at what we're doing, no longer should be sufficient for us, right? Our need is too great. The importance of supporting business needs and requires all of us to come from a collaborative, bring my resources to the table approach to help the next person, the next group succeed. Because what we have to change is that the fact that the Black community in Champaign County, 75% of us would be considered low income, right? So that's the economic core. We can't address any of our social issues until we address this economic issue that changes the dynamic for our kids, our families, our neighborhoods, and ultimately our community. So you want to close us out?
Just a comment and you can close. Just want to go over that quick list real quick. The big thing that has been said is this being a community-led initiative, and I think it means a lot when we have our business owners telling us our needs. From there, knowing that we need to get together and collaborate as agencies that are providing support to those businesses. So what I want to throw out there is that clearly, the survey results gave us a lot of information as what's needed by our Black businesses. But just hearing from the individuals that spoke out, we have leadership development, community organization that is assisting with grassroots development, best marketing practices, networking and mentorship, communication hub for information, access to finance, access to real estate, as well as strengthening our Black chamber community as being maybe a natural hub for all of this information. For our agencies that are here today, if you are someone that leads a cause in one of these, or you will be happy to take a more leadership role within a larger group to help push these things forward, please see Tracy or myself to let us know, because it's going to be extremely important that we collaborate, we use the resources that we have, and we continue to develop on what's happening now so that we can have a better future for our Black businesses. I do see one comment.
Yeah, I think it's important to do a survey like this with business owners, but I also think if you want real information, you should go to those agencies that are supporting small businesses, because they deal with many small businesses, and they can really summarize what those problems are, and how to solve them.
Thank you for that feedback. I can add that to the list. So once again, if any entities that are out there that deal in some of these things that were listed as needs for our Black community, Black business community, please reach out to Tracy or myself. We'll be excited to create this collaboration so that we can move forward. You want me to wrap up? At this time, we would like to thank everyone so much for your attendance today and your participation. Please make sure that you signed in so that we can get information out to you so we can let you know of our next steps moving forward. By any means, if someone heard something that was mentioned today and you know a direct resource for them, please don't hesitate to stop a person as they leave today and get their information so we can continue to network and build a wonderful organization to support these Black businesses. On behalf of all the organizations that helped put this together, thank you all so much. And again, can we give another round of applause to Mr. Matthews for coming out and giving the results? And once again, thank you all so much for coming out, and have a wonderful day.